Meantime, Pope Francis also getting in on the act, blaming the ills of the global economy and not Islam as the inspiration for terrorism, saying, quote, terrorism grows when there is no other option, and as long as the world economy has at its center the god of money and not the person. To former Navy SEAL Carl Higbie, who doesn't agree with the Pope on this, and I hope you don't get struck by lightning, Carl.
I know. Well, you know.
No, but we know that this Pope, he's from Argentina.
Right.
He grew up in a socialist environment, and it's obviously had a major impact on him. It's not the first time he's made these sort of statements, but he is doing more and more, some people think, apologizing for ISIS and other terror groups.
It's very interesting, Charles. And the thing is, too, we've seen a number of flubs by this Pope before. This is the guy who told, Americans that we want to tear down walls, not build them, yet the Vatican is surrounded by walls. So I think the legitimacy of this Pope in this thing, I don't know if he's getting his talking points from Marie Harf over at the State Department, but he needs to understand that radical fundamentalists, Islamic fundamentalists cause terrorism, not lack of jobs. I mean, let's say all these terrorists did have jobs. Would we have to give them leave, paid leave for, to go conduct jihad? No. It's about Islam.
Well, I do think that if you, from bin Laden himself, who came from a very wealthy family, right, to some of the so-called homegrown folks in America who weren't poor. I mean, there were a lot of college students driving around in convertibles, and they were pretty well off. So it certainly wasn't a lack of money that was driving their animosity toward America.
No, absolutely not.
Or toward Western values.
This is a group of idiots who are attracted to some sort of cause, and radical Islam is the cause that they've chosen. They, and there's millions of these people out there, and there's even more overseas. There's thousands here domestically, and the problem is we're allowing it to exist with this lackadaisical attitude that, Islam is not the problem here. We need to focus on the aspects of Islam that are causing and attracting people to do terrorist acts.
Well, let me ask you, if we saw the Arab Spring, and part of that was economically driven, if economies in a world were doing better, would that put a dent in it at all? Would that have some disenfranchised kid who might not have a job, maybe with a job opportunity, would that help at all? No,
and I think the socialists, the Democrats, and the Pope might find something else to blame. It could be, global warming or whatever.
I think we've heard global warming before.
Yeah, exactly, we have. So, but I mean, it is a characteristic talking point for whatever they don't agree with in the current economy. They will go ahead and say that that's the reason for terrorism, and we should change it, and we all need to be socialists, because that's worked out really well for every country that's tried it, right?
Carl, yeah, I want to ask you too. I'm going to get back to those airstrikes against ISIS in Libya. Airstrikes are beginning. I don't know that. Is that enough, or where do we go from here with respect to the next big stronghold for ISIS?
The problem is you can't fight this with just airstrikes. Charles, you and I have been talking about this for, I don't know, a year now. Is the airstrikes, sure, they make some sort of dent, but the problem is it's like cutting the head off a snake. It's like whack-a-mole. You pop one down, another one pops up. We need to go in there, have tactical strike teams on the ground, people like SEALs like myself, go in there, take out these guys, get the intelligence so we can follow on and do additional airstrikes. We also need to commit to the fact that this may be a 100-year war. This has been their goal for 1,300 years. It hasn't changed. So we need to commit to the fact that we may need to occupy that area for 100 years.
But do you think Americans want to do that? I mean, how do you sell that to the American public?
That's a very tough one, because you have 98% of the people in America who elect the people who make the decision to govern the 2% that have chosen to serve. And that's the problem here, is the people who have chosen to serve, we're willing to go that fight. But the American people, the 98%, which is okay if you haven't served, but they don't want to do it because I don't think they understand the fundamentals of it until it's here on our front door, and then it's too late.
Well, you're a Donald Trump surrogate. I know he's talked about aggressively trying to wipe out ISIS very quickly if he's elected, but I don't think even he would be for staying embedded in these countries very long.
Well, that's the thing is I think Donald Trump is going through a transition. He's learning more about the actual war in Iraq and Afghanistan right now and understand the dynamic more. And he's willing to go to extreme measures to take this target out. And I think once he gets there, he's going to realize if it means long-term occupancy, he doesn't want to do it, but it might be. But
how do you stay somewhere long-term and not somehow start the nation build?
Well, the problem is nation building as an entirety goal. That's what we did under Bush's hearts and minds. We transferred over to nation building.
Right.
And we stopped killing bad guys. That's the problem. When you stop killing bad guys, your nation building is going to fail. I'm not a big proponent of nation building. I think the U.S. soldier is the most deadly weapon the world has ever known. Use us to kill bad guys. Don't use us to build schools.
Kill the bad guys, keep the peace, and allow the citizens of those countries to develop whatever government they want but without being influenced or intimidated by
and do not overthrow people running the country. Like Saddam was a murderous dictator, great, but he kept the country somewhat stable. We can't expect to overthrow these guys and everything to be hunky-dory.
Well, what about the Powell Doctrine, where he says it's okay to overthrow someone like a Colin Powell, like a Saddam Hussein, but you come in with such an overwhelming force, you don't kill the generals, you don't run them into the hills, you do leave people with power and who understand the power structure in place, who may not be as sadistic as someone like a Hussein.
Right, but we did, look what happened. We did have a lot of people, a lot of Saddam's senior leaders leave and flee when we overthrew them.
Right, I mean, if we had kept those folks, would that have made things better?
I don't think so, because what we have now is we have those folks, and what they did was they flew to Syria. They came back with the insurgents, the insurgent movement. They started fighting the Kurds. They moved back into Iraq, and now they took over, and now we have ISIS. So I don't know if that's better or worse. I think we had something. It wasn't perfect. We put them in there in the first place. Just leave it. It's not our problem.
We go in there, and we have this overwhelming force, and we go in there with really destructive, we do a lot of things that maybe will be unsettling to some folks, like even killing relatives of members of ISIS. How dramatically does that reduce the risk of terrorism in America? Well,
greatly. I mean, look, these people are willing to strap bombs to themselves, but they're also willing to strap bombs to their kids. They need to understand, and if you're living in let's say, Raqqa, a terrorist-occupied area, it's not because you're part of the solution, Charles. It's because you're either don't care, you're part of the problem, or you're a terrorist yourself. So we need to understand that war is not pretty, and the American people need to understand that war is not pretty, and we need to go to sometimes extreme lengths to win those wars. That's how we did in World War II, and that was the war we won.
All right, Carl Higbie, and there's a good chance tonight you'll be on Kelly Files later tonight talking about the Khan situation.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.